on your genetic makeup. And I think that that's an important fact for people to know, and that's something that we're finding out more and more every year. Lots of diseases. We have 35,000 deaths every year associated with alcohol use alone. So we're not talking about driving. We're not talking about people falling off balconies. We're not talking about homicides. We're talking about use. Just from drinking, Centers for Disease Control say that there are 35 to 40,000 American deaths every year in this country. Now, the comparable figure for marijuana, can anyone guess? Zero. According to the Centers for Disease Control, there are 0 deaths attributable to marijuana use every year, and there's actually no record in the medical literature of a single marijuana overdose in history. There's never been an individual who overdosed and died on marijuana. Now, you gotta go over there, man. This is the exile section. So, there's never been an overdose in history. As we've established, there's 0 deaths attributed to marijuana use. Marijuana and cancer. We've often, hear people spread these myths that, marijuana use is just as bad as tobacco use. It's worse. It causes cancer. If you can find me one individual in the entire world who has developed lung cancer as a result of only using marijuana, I will give you $1 million right now. It's just not possible. There has never been a single individual in history who has acquired lung cancer purely from smoking marijuana. It just hasn't happened. And there's a very scientific reason for that. When you use tobacco products, tobacco has nicotine in it. And nicotine is a type of chemical that actually helps foster the growth of cells and tissue that ultimately form cancer. Marijuana, on the other hand, has an active ingredient known as THC, psychoactive ingredient, that actually inhibits the formation of these cell growths and the metastasization that leads to cancer. So you're actually inhaling carcinogenic smoke in both cases, but in one case you have a chemical in there that's turning it into tar and leading to the potential for cancer, and in the other case it's actually preventing that from happening. Now, if there's any serious harm associated with marijuana use, one of those harms is certainly the fact that you're doing some temporary damage to your lungs. You are inhaling smoke. Anyone who smoked a little pot and tried to go jogging the next day will notice that it's a little tougher, just like if you smoke cigarettes or any other tobacco product. But it is temporary. And even after long-term use, they found that people, once they stop using, tend to be able to live normal lives with regards to their respiratory systems and so on. Addiction. We have mounds of evidence that suggests that alcohol is more addictive than marijuana. Does this mean that someone cannot get addicted to marijuana? No. Addiction is really, by definition, means that your use of some product or you're engaging in some behavior too much is damaging other aspects of your life. So if you're not going to class because you're smoking pot, if you're not going to your job, if you're not taking care of your family or yourself because you're using marijuana, yes, you are addicted. Same goes for alcohol. Same goes for World of Warcraft, quite frankly. I was actually talking to a drug treatment professional friend of mine about this, and they're seeing more and more people come into an addiction treatment facility for playing video games. And it's because they have lost their job, or they've been thrown out of school, or they've lost a spouse or girlfriend because they just can't stop playing. Does that mean that World of Warcraft is truly an addictive, physiologically addictive game? Of course not. But some people have problems with it. And the same is true for marijuana. We actually have a section in the book that's titled, "Is Marijuana for Everyone?" And the answer is no. Just like alcohol's not for everyone, everyone knows that person or maybe that family member who, when they get drunk, becomes a total asshole. The uncle, the cousin, the guy down the hall, your roommate, you. And I'd be lying if I said that wasn't me at some point in time. There's obviously a lot of harmful aspects associated with both of these substances. But as we're seeing, it's kind of clear that when it comes to harm to the body and levels of toxicity, marijuana is far safer than alcohol. You can't overdose and die. You can use it throughout the course of your life without seeing any serious health impairments, health effects. The same is not true for alcohol. And then there's this social issue involved when it comes to the use of marijuana and how people act when they use marijuana or when they use alcohol. As many of you probably know, people who drink tend to become very aggressive, right? Aggressive, violent, maybe reckless. Look at how people drive. This is a good way to kind of get an idea of the effect that these drugs have on your system. People who drink and drive tend to drive faster, tend to take more chances, tend to be more likely to think they can drive okay. And people who use marijuana typically are more cautious, more reserved, don't take as many chances, and what we've always heard the jokes about it, but they drive slower. You hear about the person driving 10 miles below the speed limit while they're stoned. But what we find is that for many people, they actually find that when they use marijuana, they're more cognizant of what's going on around them because they know that they just used some marijuana, so they're paying attention to everything. I can say that when I'm sober, sometimes I'm not the most attentive driver. Phone's ringing, messing with the radio, fishing around in the back seat for something, whatever it may be. But if you maybe use marijuana, you're maybe concerned that you might do something wrong, but you got to get somewhere. So it's typically far less harmful. Now, we don't encourage people to use marijuana and drive. In fact, we discourage it because quite literally, it's not a good idea. It's really, even if someone hits you, you stand to get in a whole lot of trouble. And if you have used enough marijuana, or it has an effect on you where maybe it'll make you distracted. Maybe it'll make you more likely to be distracted by someone else. Not a good idea. But there is evidence that it's far less harmful than drinking and driving. In fact, the largest study that's ever been done on this was done in France. And what they found that is people with a pretty significant amount of THC in their blood are actually less likely to be culpable in a traffic accident than people with a legal amount of alcohol in their blood. So in other words, you can go to the bar, have a beer, leave. You get pulled over, it's only 0.02, no problem, that's the legal limit. You could use marijuana and have a pretty substantial amount in your blood, and yet you are less likely to be at fault in a traffic accident than that person who's legally driving under the influence of alcohol. But like I said, alcohol makes people a little more aggressive. They feel like they can't drive. One study, this is actually, we mentioned in the book, they actually took a number of people to a closed driving course, and they said, we want to determine what type of impairment there will be if you smoke a bunch of pot and then get behind the wheel of a car. So they get everyone high, and they say, now drive. And they were really surprised when a bunch of the people said, no way, I'm stoned, and I don't want to drive, because I can tell I'm impaired. And it really got these researchers thinking, like, geez, maybe people who use marijuana are more aware of the fact that they're impaired and less likely to even try to drive. Now, we've all heard alcohol referred to as liquid courage. People think they're fine, they think they're okay, they can do it, and we see all sorts of serious problems. So that's another big aspect there. Another element of aggressive
we want to thank our sponsors again.